Welcome to Book Huddle. I'm your host, Karen Reeder. Today we have author Christina Wyman. She debuted with this amazing book. I want to say in 2023, is that right? For Jawbreaker?
Yep.
2023, Jawbreaker came out. And then just last fall, we've got Slouch. And I'm so excited about this conversation. We have so many great things we're going to talk about, and just we're going to have a really open conversation about talking to kids using literacy to talk to kids about big issues. But first, Christina, I'd love you to take a second. Tell us a little bit about yourself in addition to being an author.
I'm also an educator. I started out as a middle school teacher in New Jersey for seventh and eighth grade English. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I migrated to Jersey, taught there, and then migrated to Michigan, where I did my graduate work and continued teaching. And I still teach, but my audience is now teachers, people who are going to be teachers.
Excellent.
Typically off the board, across the board, all kinds of subjects, but my home base is English education still.
Awesome. That
Yeah.
is so cool. And what a big change, Brooklyn to Michigan.
Yeah, it's wild. I also lived in Wisconsin for 5 years,
Oh,
where
cool.
I did some more of the work in English education at the University of Wisconsin. But I am back in Michigan, writing and teaching and living life.
Very cool. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, give us a little elevator pitch of Jawbreaker. Tell us what this book is about.
Yeah, so on the surface, it's about a seventh grader who has a complicated orthodontic case. So she has what is technically called a class 2 malocclusion, which I kind of just interpret as a really severe overbite. So in addition to braces, she has apparatus that she has to wear in the afternoons and especially at night. So it's a Oh, I called it a night brace growing up. I had to wear one too. A lot of kids have to wear
Yeah,
this. I called it
right.
a night brace growing up, but it hurts. So she calls it the jawbreaker. And on the
Mhm.
surface, it's a child dealing with this complicated case, but she also has a lot of other things going on.
So much more.
Yeah, her family is pretty dysfunctional. Her parents aren't getting along. It's becoming known that her dad has a problem with alcohol. School bullies are an issue. And what I think people find most surprising is that her biggest bully is actually her sister. So, yeah, that tends
And
to
not just
surprise
at
people.
home. That
Yeah,
is so incredible because there's always sibling stuff, right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
taking it to school, whoa.
Yeah, there's sibling stuff everywhere there are siblings, but this is just next level.
Yes.
It's like diabolical.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's Jawbreaker. She's dealing with a whole bunch of different things. And um Slouch is about another seventh grader who happens to be a lot taller than her seventh grade peers, male and female. So she's 5'10", and this wasn't really ever something she thought about until other people started thinking about it and pointing it out to her. And it becomes this really annoying thing of, why don't you play basketball like your brother?
Right.
Or,
Good. You're tall. Why don't you?
yeah, like, I mean, why don't you do this and that and this with your body? None of these things you're interested in, but that doesn't matter. And also, this really annoying, you can't have a crush on this one or that one because they're just so much shorter than you. Those kinds
That
of,
one, so frustrating. How does
yeah,
anybody have the right to say
right,
because of appearances or anything about an individual who they can
right.
be drawn
For
to,
sure,
they're
for
crushing,
sure.
right? Or be
So, yeah, yeah. So that's some of what she deals with, but then she's also noticing how it's not just family and friends who are commenting and saying annoying things. She's also dealing with how her body has kind of become public property, because when she's out in public, it also becomes this issue of strange men are saying things about her body, or they think she's older, and they're they're trying to flirt with her and they're saying creepy things. And, it's just, it is the reality of being a girl or woman in a public space. So she's contending with all of these new things as well.
Right. So this, it's so incredible. And I read Slouch last fall, and then after we got this scheduled, I was listening to Jawbreaker, and I was just like, wow, it's just amazing how Christina is able to take these really heavy topics, but make an enjoyable story. Because whoever wants, we talk about it so much in picture books, but also in middle grade, you got to be careful. You don't want to make it too didactic, right? Because the kids,
Right.
they know that, they feel it, and you don't want to hand them a book and be like, this is about bullying. This is about, And
Right.
so you got to be careful there. And you don't feel that when you read it, that there's this message being shoved down the throat. The kid could just sit there and read and enjoy a book that they don't feel, because I feel like kids can feel that sometimes. So they're like, oh my gosh, all I can feel from this book is that they want me to get this message. They could
Right.
read the book, enjoy the story, and some kids might walk away and never think a thing about it, right? They might.
Yeah.
Maybe they
Yeah.
internalize some without realizing it, but sometimes that's what you want, is just a good story. And the good story
Right.
is there in both of them. They're
Thank
just
you.
excellent stories. But there's
Thank you.
also so many amazing themes that I was like, Christina, what do you feel if we just talk about using literacy to bridge these big topics? So if it's an adult, probably a teacher would be the most natural setting, but even a parent, I would hope that a lot of parents are aware of what their kids are reading to open up these conversations. And
Yeah.
so how would you suggest to an adult out there that they're like, how can I start a conversation with my kid? Do you have any advice
Mhm.
on the starter point?
Well, full disclosure, I am not a parent. So I will,
But
I
you're an
need, yeah,
educator, right?
I'm an educator, I'm an author, I'm not a parent. I don't think it diminishes what I feel could be
Right.
useful, but I just wanted to make that clear
Yes.
that I don't have direct experience.
Because the parent knows their child best,
Yeah,
usually. That's
yeah.
right.
It's interesting to me because I actually do read reviews. Reader reviews, Goodreads, Amazon, whatever.
Right.
And I do pay attention to how people are talking about my books, not because I'm a glutton for punishment necessarily, but some of it is actually really useful. Some of it actually confirms some of my own instincts that never made it onto the page because of whatever editorial decisions or stuff like this.
Well, and you've got a limited number of pages to get what you want out.
Yeah, yeah. But then it's really the question is tricky because I've also come across a few perspectives that kind of illustrated to me that the adult reading the books didn't find some of the issues all that believable.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yeah, so like the way the parents are in
Okay.
my books, or the extent of the bullying that goes on in Jawbreaker.
Mm,
There's like for some people, they present this believability thing.
right.
And I'm kind of like, so my books are not memoir, but they
Right.
are based on things I know well.
Well,
And
especially you see that with the New York. Both take place in New York.
absolutely, I could not, if someone said, you must spend your next 3 or 4 books writing from the suburbs, my career would be over. I have
Right.
absolutely no idea what it
What it's
is
like
to
to live there.
grow up and live life in a suburb. It's like I don't know, and I don't have the time
Mm.
to
To
invest
go
in
find out.
learning what that
You got to
is.
write what you know.
Yeah, so I write from cities. I write from extreme parental dysfunction, family dysfunction. I write from extreme bullying. There is nothing about what I do that is like science fiction. You know,
Right.
if
Right.
I'm writing about it, it's because I am deeply familiar with at least some component of it.
Right.
So I'm kind of starting this conversation from a place of believability because I think the first avenue, maybe one of the avenues into conversations with kids could be, you know, so this is what's going on in the book. Have you seen this happen
What a great start.
anywhere?
Yeah.
And
Because you don't want to
I
be
don't,
like, have you been bullied? Have
right,
you been a bully? That's not how you start the conversation.
because, I mean, my parents definitely did not know the extent of what I went through because exactly like Max in Jawbreaker and Stevie in Slouch, my parents had a tendency to make hard situations worse.
Hmm.
So there was a lot they didn't know. But, if there is something that really bothers an adult reader about what they're finding in my books, I would ask kids if and how and where they've seen that happening
Yeah.
to you know, not to confirm or validate anything. I don't need that,
No,
but
no.
just to, if an adult genuinely wants to become educated about what's going on in the world around their children that they may not necessarily be privy to,
Yeah.
I I would ask, where do you see this happening? Where do you see that
Right.
happening? Does anything in your world remind you of X, Y, and Z or whatever?
I really love this response so, so much because it's making me realize, and I'm like, yeah, we don't want them to feel on the spot, first of all, and uncomfortable, but just, is this real? Is this really happening? Like,
Yeah.
and where and how, and more about other kids. And then maybe they might open up and be like, and even me. But,
Yeah.
that if you
Again,
make it not about them at first,
yes, I think that's a good call
right?
as someone
Because
who
they're
is
going to be
very,
defensive,
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know of many 12-year-olds who would open up that easily
right?
to anyone, really, because these things are so steeped in shame and embarrassment. There were things my best friends didn't know
Right.
unless they saw it happening. It's shocking to me how much the believability piece seems to come up around my work at times,
Right.
particularly, just the other week, there was a news story I came across. I almost posted it and then decided against it.
Mhm.
But a district has been sued and lost because of a bullying issue.
Wow.
So they're being held accountable as a school district for not intervening
Yeah.
when they absolutely had the information they needed to intervene. And
Wow.
they just said, we'll see what happens or whatever. Well,
Right.
this is what happened. And this continued. This is like some of the lower stakes examples
Yeah.
of what continues to happen across the country around bullying alone. And, in this particular case, a female student was stalked by one of her peers, so it was a really messy and gross situation. So we have this
Scary.
going on. It makes the news. There are plenty of things that don't make the news, and
Yeah.
we still have people who question the severity. And I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't get
That's it is. It is so incredible. And I think part of it comes from, I don't know, wanting to believe the best in children and wanting to feel like they're doing their best,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, like Stevie, she has comments about her height from people who think they're well-meaning about why don't you play basketball or your legs look nice. That
Um,
it's like a friend's dad that comments on how nice her legs look.
yeah.
And I feel like I get it a little bit because I want people to receive compliments, but you don't want it to be creepy, right? I I try to compliment people when I'm like, you have a great smile. But is that going to make another woman uncomfortable if I tell her she has a great smile?
Mm,
So it can get hard there too, that it's like, are we going to be in a society that we never give compliments? Because that's what the friend's dad felt like.
mm,
It's, I'm just complimenting her legs, right?
mm.
That we
Yeah,
want,
well, it's more so her own father who thinks that some of these things are just normal and okay. And I don't know. I think we're just kind of when we comment on someone's bodies, negative or positive,
yeah,
we are entering a territory that needs to die in a fire. I really just, now that I know what I know all these years on, I'd rather when someone be dealing with me, I'd rather they be,
that it should have nothing to do with you physically.
no, is there intelligence you can comment on? Is there kindness you can
Yeah,
comment on? Is
you can
there
see something they've done,
yeah, something like anything. Is there a really positive way that they navigate the world that you can comment on? Are they driven? Are they um whatever it is, I don't know.
right?
But I still like as far as the smile example, because I mean I have my own baggage with all of that stuff, but if someone said to me, "You have such a nice," and occasionally people do say that to me because I've had loads of orthodontic work. So,
Right,
this smile, this face was kind of hard fought, right?
right.
But people do still sometimes say things, and I can't say that I always just automatically receive it as a compliment.
Okay.
It's more
It makes
like
you remember something, or it's like you just like my smile because it's been changed, or
well, they wouldn't know, they wouldn't necessarily have the
but
before and
would you have said the same thing this many years ago type thing in your head? You know what I mean? Would they have complimented my smile before the work?
or is there nothing else? You
Nothing. Okay.
know?
Okay. Yeah. Is there
Like
nothing else about me? That's the thing that you, okay.
I don't know. I don't
Right.
maybe I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I personally am too sensitive to it. I don't know. Like I'm sure there are
Other thoughts
other
about it.
examples, but I
Well, and those watching, if you want to come over to YouTube, because some of you are just purely listening out there, but we're also on video, and there's the ability to have a conversation. Say nice things the way you bring it up if you're going to come over and converse, people. But we can have conversations. I put myself out there very much about things that I feel comfortable saying and doing. So, you can say it without getting mean and nasty, and we can start having these conversations as a society, right? To understand where each other's coming from.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
So I think those are definite first steps is why? Because if we understand somebody, we would be more likely rather than to feel like, oh, we're just, everybody has a soapbox they've got to get on and we're just going to cushion everybody's life, whatever certain responses in meanness might be, if it's not, oh, help me understand, then there's not ever progress to be made.
Honestly, people who respond that way aren't prepared for a real conversation.
And
And
do they even want it?
no, they don't. They just want to say what they want to say, and that's it. We all know people like this. So I just think about the kind of world I want children growing up in and having access to. So again, I don't have children of my own, but I have five nieces and nephews. And one of because I come from a family of people who are just naturally a lot taller, a lot
Right.
bigger, we all naturally looked older than the other children.
Right.
That was just a part of our experience genetically. And I have a niece who is probably going to experience that even more than I did because she's even so much bigger than I was at her age. She's 6, and I wouldn't normally. draw attention to this except for the topic that we are on. And I would love to know that she is growing up in a world where her body is not going to be the central focus at every turn because of how much bigger she is than her peers, how
Right.
much older she looks. I fear for what happens when she does get a little older and starts discovering that her body is seen as public property the way all women experience at some point too
Right.
young,
Right.
right? For me, it began at around 11 or 12. So, if we want to talk about this in terms of, oh, this is too woke, this is too cushiony, kids don't have any ability to deal with this or that or the other thing, I am not having a conversation with that type of conversation
Right.
because it is
Because
not productive.
they're not even trying to have a conversation.
No, there's
And
no conversation to be
yeah.
had there. It's just someone who wants to say things. I want my nieces to have access to a world I didn't have access to.
Right.
And that requires a certain kind of conversation, a
Yeah.
certain kind of understanding. It's why I write the books that I write.
Nice.
And if certain audiences can't handle that reality, they can read other kinds of books. I don't care. I
Right.
care about my niece's safety and I care about starting conversations around what I know firsthand young girls go through, and it's not normal and it's not okay.
Right.
That's why I have the conversations I have.
Right. And it doesn't matter whether it's a big girl, tall girl, or a big girl, heavy girl, or a small boy, a short boy, a skinny little boy. Because do you know what? I've seen comments like that.
Yeah,
And boys that come home and get really upset.
yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether it's braces or hair. We often hear in many different cultures about hair, or maybe there's wraps. We can go on and on. There are so many things that
And it
people
could be
comment
nothing at
on.
all. It could be nothing at all. There is no girl in existence, no matter what her size, no matter what her anything, that does not find herself at some point early on being viewed as public property.
Right?
That girl does not exist.
Right.
And that's why I have the conversations I have. I want girls to know that there are people who are on the lookout for this kind of stuff, and there are people who are willing to begin real conversations.
Yes. And so teachers, when they're reading this book, because there are a lot of teachers like you who are like, I'm not a parent. Not all teachers and librarians are parents. Because
Yeah,
this podcast is out there for anybody who is getting books into the hands of kids, and we're not all parents. And
yeah,
so a librarian can be an open person to have a conversation with, there's
absolutely.
so many that it's like, I am somebody who's there for you.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's
exactly.
great to know that there are people, and they might know that not because you said, I think you might want this book because you're a tall girl. You know what I mean? You don't need to say that, but the fact
No,
that you have those books on display in your classroom, on your shelf, one of my favorite things to do as a parent is to just bring random books home and leave them out from the library and just let my kids explore. And so they know that I've brought some books home that I don't just go and pick up anything, because I know that there can be all kinds of things in literature. I look
yeah,
into things before I pick it up. So they know that I've looked into the book and I've
yeah.
set it out there. But I don't tell them, I want you to read this because
Right.
that I've exposed them to it. They'll be like, oh, I can talk to somebody about this.
You know what Judy Bloom says?
Oh,
So I went to a conference where she was the keynote, and
uh-huh.
she was the last minute keynote. It was at the National Conference of Teacher Educators,
Okay.
NCTE. And the original keynote was supposed to be Tony Danza. This is like now, I think 12 years ago.
Okay. Okay.
And he he broke some bone or something.
Okay.
He couldn't make it last minute. So they secured Judy Bloom
Which is
last minute.
incredible.
So you can imagine the attendee excitement, right?
Right.
So I don't remember if it was a Q and A and someone asked her, how do you suggest we get kids to read books or whatever the question was?
Yes.
What she said was a lot like you just said. I leave books around the house and just, they're there, they're normal. This is a normal activity
Yeah.
to engage in. I don't pressure anyone, I just leave them
Yes.
around. But then she said, and if there's a book I really want a child to read, I leave that book out, but then I say to the child, oh, you might be a little too young for this, right? To inspire
Right. Be
like
like,
that
well,
salaciousness.
show you I'm not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And it's amazing just the fact that we have those books out and that we expose our kids to those books, I think opens avenues for conversations. And I wanted to suggest in Jawbreaker, the teacher has the child do it, but you could send out anonymous surveys
Yeah. Yeah.
and
For sure.
just find out what's
For
going on
sure. For
because
sure. You want to take the temperature of your school, assess the climate of your school, ask the kids because sometimes, a lot of the times, the teachers don't even know. I
yeah,
was a teacher. It is not possible to know everything. You
we're not
don't
gonna know.
necessarily know what's going on in the lunchroom. You don't know what's going on in the hallways
I
necessarily.
mean, we know some general things, but not
Right.
everything. We can't. And
Very
you're right.
general. And
Yeah.
then you really might not know specifics until somebody somewhere gets into trouble for something, you know? So if you want honest responses because you, as an administrator or a group of teachers or something, are genuinely interested in the climate of your school in a specific way, send out an anonymous survey.
Nice.
Give the kids time in class to do it,
Right.
and you'll get information.
Yeah. Yeah. If they know that there's not necessarily a name to that, yeah,
Yeah,
I think so. Because I think kids want to be heard and kids
yeah,
want to be connected with and
yeah.
seen. And it's so great that these books are out there because they weren't there before. There's not, I can't say, okay, you loved Slouch. Let me find you another. I can tell you the Tall Girl movie, but there's not a ton. And so excellent that there's more. And
I'm really glad to hear that. I'm glad to know that at least some of the work I do is starting certain kinds of conversations. That makes me
hope
happy.
so. Yeah. And it's okay to not understand and think, wow, that a parent should not be like that. Actually, I was on a committee judging books for an award, and a couple of the committee members were like, it's well, for one, we were doing speculative fiction. So it was funny to me that somebody would say that wasn't realistic. But the part that they were saying wasn't realistic was how could a parent do and say this and put a child in this situation? And I said, well, first of all, this parent is overwhelmed. This parent is now a single parent. This parent is concerned so much about that child's, you know, health issues that were not there before. And
Yeah.
this parent is trying to provide for it. And we don't know what it's like for other parents. Of course, we think because we are trying to be the best we can be and we were raised in different situations, but it's so easy to say, oh my gosh, a parent wouldn't be like Max's parents and say that's unrealistic. Well, yeah, if you're not exposed to that, great that you think
I
somebody
envy.
wouldn't be like that. But do you know what? It's out there, and I want you to realize that.
I envy the people who cannot believe it.
Right?
Honestly, I envy the upbringing and surroundings that would yield such a perspective of disbelief. I envy that. But in addition to, the stress of parenting that might lead to certain ways of parenting,
Right.
in my case, intergenerational family trauma has defined everything. And we are talking about generations. We are talking about, I can't even tell you how many family members, some of whom, might be a year old, who are affected by people who are no longer alive.
Yeah.
That's intergenerational trauma. That is what informs the parents I create in my books more than anything else, because that's what I know. So
Right.
it's interesting because when I was growing up reading books, and even now as an adult reading books, if I encounter parents in books that are all just doing the right thing most of the time, I'm like, what is this? You know?
Right.
So
There's,
there's a
yeah,
believability issue on that side of things too, just in
that's
case there
true.
was any confusion about that,
Right.
right?
Well, and even these that just has had a good upbringing by parents,
Good, normal, stable.
good, normal, kind, loving, concerned parents, you have some issues in your home that
Yes.
maybe you must be blind to because none of us are without parenting issues
Yeah.
and none of us are without social issues at school. And this is what Jawbreaker and Slouch are doing is it's like, wow, there's this level of empathy of for both of them that within their friendships that they don't
Yeah.
realize, what Keisha's got going on at home and what Shrin has
Yeah.
going on at
Sure.
home.
Yeah.
And I can't remember Stevie's friend, but you don't
Ariana.
realize,
Yeah.
Ariana, what everybody has going on at home, and it helps kids develop empathy. So I'm hoping that the better thing to do as an adult would be like, wow, I don't realize different homes for one, but I bet kids will see that because it's like, I wonder about my friend because these friends who think they know each other so well and are best friends
Right.
realize what else is there,
Yeah. Our best friends do not know everything. They
right?
just don't. And, you know, I know for a fact that there are children from dysfunctional families who see themselves in my books.
Yeah,
I know for a fact. I am one of them. I created what I knew to be true. I am not the only person on earth who used to be a 12-year-old in a dysfunctional home.
right.
Like, these parents exist, these dynamics exist, toxic sibling bullying exists. There are studies on all of
Yeah,
this. There didn't used to be, but there are now. It's
yeah,
really interesting to read about what we now know to be true in the social sciences.
right,
So all of this exists.
right.
I
And
mean,
wherever you live, whatever color of skin, and if you're like, I am not a white girl growing up in New York, it doesn't matter. If you're rural and you're a person of color, you can gain empathy for other people and you can have a jawbreaker and height and size, regardless of the color of your skin. And regardless, there's social issues. There's so many things. And I think that's one of the beautiful themes of the book is you don't, it's great that people can feel seen because of this. I'm not taking away from that. Sorry. Yay for that still. Still, that's powerful and still good. The great thing is that any reader, boy, girl, any age and size, we can gain empathy and enjoy these books of helping us be better by seeing and understanding what other people go through.
Let me tell you on that topic, one of my favorite pieces of I don't know, Goodreads, their reviews. It's not
Right.
their reviews and its feedback. Like, I think of that as one and the same.
Nice.
And this one mom wrote about how she was reading Slouch with her son
Uh-huh.
and how engaged he was and how she really appreciated the opportunity for him to see this side of things
Right.
as it might relate to his peers. And,
Right.
and so, the empathy piece, like,
Yes.
so to your point, yeah, Slouch is not just for tall girls.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot to be gained, even if you do not physically or emotionally or whatever
Yeah.
Lee identify with the
Yes.
character.
Well, I think it's great and powerful, and thank you for writing these books because I
Oh,
I feel like they are a force for good change in our world of helping kids.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes. So, Christina, I love to end my book huddles with a recommendation from you of one of your favorite children's books.
I'm just going to hold it up right here
Yay.
because this is, yes, it's a children's book, but I think every person in the country should read this as required reading. If we could get a country-wide book club going where
Yay, one country, one book.
everyone is required to read this. Alan Gratz,
Ooh, I
Refugee.
love it.
Yeah.
Yes, such a good one.
This I taught this in a college class that was designed to read children's literature, deal with children's literature, and it's actually a very complicated course. It's not just, hey, everybody read children's literature.
They're fun.
Yeah, everyone gets an A. We deconstructed it and talk about empathy.
Yeah,
If you read this book and really deal with the different generations of people and characters who fought their way to a better life. If you can't feel from this book what that must have been like for those groups and the various connections he makes across the characters and generations, I mean, I think it is such a perspective changing book that if that doesn't happen for a person, it's because they didn't want it to. You
right.
know,
Right.
this book for me is an absolute must read, top of my list, Alan Gratz Refugee.
It's so good. And three different refugees in three different time periods, I think, and different
Yep.
countries.
Yep.
And it's powerful because there's so many different points of view and it's so emotional. And what Alan Gratz is so well known for, I think it's his catchphrase, and I don't think I got it right, but putting kids in mortal danger is like one of his big things. If you pick up an Alan Gratz, it is going to be intense and constantly intense.
I actually have to prepare myself. So this is the only Alan Gratz book that I've read
Oh,
because
really?
I need to prepare
For the
emotionally,
emotion.
you know? I mean that's just what he does. I want to read everything he's ever done, but I need to be in a particular place
Right,
emotionally.
right.
And I also need to not be writing my own stuff because I get to I don't know, something happens where
When you
I
are
can't
emotional.
compartmentalize.
Okay, okay.
So and I have written so much of my own stuff across the past few years. I just finished my third book, so I need to carve out like a few months where I am doing nothing but reading Alan Gratz because I'm not writing at the same time,
Okay, there we go.
and I'm
During the book
emotionally
tour, maybe.
prepared.
It'll be a wreck during your book tour, but at least you won't be writing, maybe. Uh,
Exactly.
so is there something up and coming?
Yes, I have my third book called Breakout that should be coming out in March of 26.
Yay, excellent. We'll
Yeah,
be
it's about a
excited to
year.
see it. Can't
Yeah.
wait. Well, thank you so much. I actually could go on and on with you or talking about Alan Gratz and even just a refugee, but we will end it there.
Same, same.
And
Thank you.
thank you for joining and just inspiring a love and reading in so many.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Karen.